And welcome to another edition of the new Sports Outlaws podcast. As always, I am Neil, and this is Dan. And Dan, we want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We're doing our podcast a day later than usual because yesterday was Christmas Day, and we got a lot of sports to talk about. So, how are you, Dan?
Yep, we're in the holiday season. This is going to be our last podcast of 2024.
Good point.
So that's good. We've been doing it since August, having a good time, getting the followers up, getting good, having a good time doing it. So yeah, I'm ready to go. We got still got a lot to talk about. I know it's been a little quiet on the baseball front. Football is kind of in the rear view, but got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. Let's go.
So we are not going to get into right away the locals because there's nothing really to get into there. We'll mention them later. But what I have first on our docket are some headlines, and we are already started our second to last week of the NFL season with all the games on Christmas Day. We have another game that will be kicking off, or just kicked off actually not too long ago, and they all have playoff implications. So the game tonight is Seattle. Uh, if Seattle wins this week and next week, they are the NFC West champions. If they lose and the Rams win this week, then the Rams are the NFC champions, and Week 18 would not matter. What is the more intriguing division battle to you? Is it the Seattle Rams West, or is it the Tampa Bay Atlanta with the new Michael Penix energy in the South?
Yeah, no, I'm with that Falcons and Bucks one. Yeah, those are pretty much the only two playoff matchups that are kind of really they have a chance. I know we have some AFC ones, the Colts, Dolphins, Bengals still having outside chances, but those two divisions they seem like the only divisions that kind of determine the playoffs. And determining how the Falcons just made a QB change with Michael Penix and obviously Baker Mayfield having as good a season as he's having in Tampa. That's definitely the more intriguing matchup, especially I think the Falcons actually have swept the Bucks this year, so they have the tiebreaker right now. They're both tied. But even though, I think the Rams and the Hawks won. I think the Rams are going to take that one. I don't think the Seahawks are really any great. I'm surprised they're even as 8-7 as still in it as they are. I think the Rams are head and shoulders above them. And they do meet next week. So if somehow they're still one game back, they meet next week, and I guess that would be for the division title next week. But Falcons and Bucks I'm interested in because I can actually see both of them maybe sort of having somewhat of a shot from that 4 seed against the 5 seed, which I forget who it is right now, who that 5 seed is. It's not Washington. Is it Washington?
No, it's one of the right now. It's one of the North teams. I think
it would be
Green Bay or no,
Minnesota. It'd be
Minnesota.
Yeah, because they're second in the division, so they'd be the 5 seed. They're intriguing. I'm not fully invested in Sam Darnold yet, but in terms of the Falcons and the Bucks, I'm definitely interested with Michael Penix coming in and having a good debut, seeing how he does, and seeing if who can close out that division.
Yep. So as far as that goes, you're right. The Rams and Seattle play next week. So if they both win this week, it'll come down to the matchup next week. Both the Rams and Seattle are both Jekyll and Hyde. They have weeks where you're like, oh, they could seriously upset somebody in the playoffs, and then they have weeks where you're like, oh my God, how does this team have 9 wins? As far as Tampa Bay and Atlanta go, I love Baker. As much as Penix looks very interesting, and I think he'll be good. He was good in college. I would love to see Baker make the playoffs. And it's funny you mentioned Minnesota because if I was looking at the scenarios correctly, Minnesota can finish in 7th, but they could also finish in 1st. If they win out, or no, they can finish in 6th, not 7th.
They can finish, Green Bay.
They can finish as low as 6, but they can finish as high as 1. If they win out and get help, they can actually still get the 1 seed in the NFC.
And I'm assuming if they still win out, they finish the year 15-2, or they're 14-3. 15-2. They only have 2 losses, right?
Yeah, well, like you said, I thought it was 3, but
okay. My point is, it's 14-3 and not win the division, which is absolutely insane.
But I mean, all right. So I feel like from watching as much football as we've watched, I feel like the last month or so, Sam Darnold has looked more like the real Sam Darnold. I felt like the first couple of months, it was an aberration. Not that he's not talented. He's much more talented than what he was when he was here with the Jets. But I do believe that he's come a little bit back toward the mean, so to say, the last
Yeah,
several
yeah. I
weeks.
think he obviously had a light house on fire start for the first
Yeah,
4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then I think he was actually kind of not bad, but he wasn't good. I mean, I think that's where they got their 2 losses. And then I think lately he's been pretty decent, especially getting the ball to Jordan Addison, who's been really
yeah.
dominant for them lately. But their defense has been really good though too, and they'll be a tough out. I like Minnesota too. I mean, it'll be an interesting playoffs considering Detroit's all banged up.
So going into the rest of the week 17 games and then the week 18 games, obviously, the NFC really has much to figure out. We got those two divisions to figure out, but legitimately, unless Washington loses out, there's no way they don't finish. It's really the 1 through 7 is set, except for those two divisions that we got to figure out. But in the AFC, the bottom end is still pretty wide open, and there's a lot of tie-breaking scenarios. I really can't go through them all, but Miami is still in it, Cincinnati's still in it, and Indianapolis is still in it. So all three of those teams still have a shot. It's going to depend on what the Chargers and the Broncos do because they are ahead of those teams at the moment. I believe if I read the scenarios correctly, the Chargers, if the Chargers get one win, they are in. If the Broncos get one win, they are in. For the Broncos, this week's going to be a little tough to get that
What?
win.
Go. Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
You're probably about to say it. Go.
No, if the Broncos lose this week to the Bengals,
Yeah.
they played the Chiefs last week. Now the Chiefs have zero to play for, but you would think even the bench players and Carson Wentz are going to try their best to win. Andy Reid's not going into the game, running three into the line and punting the ball. This is not like when Philly screwed the Giants years ago and Peterson started the backup quarterback and gave like a half-assed game plan.
I was actually going to wait if we were going to talk Giants to bring that up because I know they play the Eagles next week. Get the number 1 pick for the draft. We can talk about that later.
Oh God.
But yeah, no, the Denver's got a tough road. Cincinnati's obviously on with Burrow and Chase in their offense right now. I mean, really anything could happen. And it would actually be, I think a lot of people would want to see Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all them in the playoffs just because Joe Burrow has probably had the best year of his career. And it feels like him and Chase have been like let down by, I guess, their defense. But yeah, a lot of teams are still in it. I think the Chargers they're pretty much going to get in, which is amazing considering they're supposed to be a kind of a rebuilding year with Harbaugh. But yeah, that Denver Bengals game. The Colts got the Giants, right? The Colts have the Giants this week.
This week, yep.
So I mean, it should be a win. But you never know what the Giants may want to mess up stuff. Yeah, Miami. It definitely could be interesting. We'll see how this week goes. I mean, they still all have to win out. They're still 2 down with 2 to go. But we'll see after this week to see. It'll be very interesting to see how it turns out.
Yep. Miami and Cincinnati, we'll see what they have left in the tank. I expect, as we'll get to our picks later after we record this, I expect Cincinnati to take it to the Broncos, still being alive. And if they can beat the Broncos, they're not technically dead until sometime next week. So I think Cincinnati will bring it. The Chargers have a much easier road to clinching their playoff spot with New England this week. And even if they lose this week, Las Vegas next week, they'd really have to choke this away for them to lose their playoff spot. That AFC North division is still up for grabs, even as good as Baltimore has looked. If Baltimore loses the last week of the season and the Steelers win the division. So that is what is really to play in the AFC. Like we said, 1 through 5 are really like set, and then it's just 6 and 7 needing the clinch, and then the 3 teams that are trying to nip at their heels. Then we'll move to something with actually before we move to something with little news, let's talk about even less than little news, which is negative news. The Jets and Giants are both atrocious. And who knows what's going to happen with the Jets? It's going to all come down to what GM they bring in and if that GM and coach want to convince Aaron Rodgers to stay. Like we said, I think we've said in the past, if they go with like a GM and like a coach like Vrabel or a coach like Rex Ryan or Brian Flores, and they want to convince the old quarterback to stay so they don't have to worry too much about offense, I could see that. Otherwise, it's time to start over.
Yeah, it's kind of with the Giants and Jets, kind of been a broken record. What we've been talking about, at least for the past month, really, even more than that. I don't know what we were thinking on our picks, thinking the Giants would have any type of shot. Yeah, last week against the Falcons. I mean, I guess because the line was so big, he's like, you think with a rookie quarterback, and they can at least keep it within a touchdown. But it was over early. 34-7. It was pretty bad, and that's just hopefully they don't mess up their own tank. Hopefully, or the Eagles don't mess up their tank by letting the Giants win that game. The Jets are just, who knows what's going on with the Jets. I know they keep saying Rodgers hasn't had, all the stats say he's had a really good year, but when you score 9 points against the Rams, and that the Rams aren't the house on fire defense with Aaron Donald that they had
I
last
want
year.
to say, Danny, I don't remember the exact number. I was listening to a little bit of WFAN today, in and out of doing errands and trying to get the house in order after the holiday. I want to say he's only a couple hundred yards away with 2 games to go to breaking the single season yards record as a Jet quarterback. Doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this franchise? Is that they had 3 wins. They've been a dumpster fire the whole year. 4 wins, and he's about to set a record for quarterbacks. It's insane.
Yeah, no, yeah. Even with the extra game, it really doesn't. It still tells you a lot. Yeah, it doesn't. I think he actually has similar or maybe better numbers or close to numbers with Patrick Mahomes actually this year, technically numbers wise. But obviously, there's something going on there. I mean, they have way too much talent on offense to not put up at least what close to Cincinnati's kind of putting up in terms of with Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Breece Hall, offensive line, which has been okay. It not like it's been terrible this year. And I don't know what's going on. I think something internal is going on. I know Garrett Wilson seems like he's not the happiest camper lately. Obviously, their defense has. I mean, I kind of know, but I think a lot of people are kind of know that their defense is a little overrated, especially the last couple of years with Zach Wilson at the helm. But they're just, I don't even know, like, even with the draft, where they have the number 7 or 8 pick right now or something like that, I don't even know where you go with them. Because I guess you all got to figure out with Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to figure that out first. But obviously, they got to get a GM and coach in line and figure out if that coach wants to deal with Aaron Rodgers.
Yep. And as far as the Giants go, I've said it. I understand it gets a little harder every week to say it with another loss because then you're looking at it like, how do you keep them after 2 wins? But I mean, I said it when they first got rid of Daniel Jones. I think you keep Brian Dable and you keep Shane and you let them draft their quarterback. The only reason I would let them go, and they started talking about this a little bit today, I think CMAC and Keith were talking about it a little bit when I was listening to them, is if you don't like any of these quarterbacks and they're not going to draft a quarterback, that's the only way I can see them saying, okay, then we're going to start with a new GM and a new coach. Because if you're not going to get, I agree that Dable should be back if he's getting the chance to raise his own quarterback. That's what we brought him in here because of the job he did with Josh Allen and the job he did in Buffalo. So if you're going to really judge him, I think you need to judge him on his own quarterback. The problem is if they're not in love with either of these quarterbacks or if they screw up and win one of these last 2 games, especially if Philly sits their whole team, even though I still think that their reserves are better than the Giant starting roster at this point. If they mess up their pick like the Raiders just did, the Raiders just went from 1 to 5 or 6. If the Giants win and they go from 1 to 7 or 8, they're not getting Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So unless they're in love with Milton from the Alabama quarterback,
Milrow.
Milrow.
Jalen Milrow.
There you go, Milrow. Sorry. Yeah, unless they're in love with somebody else like that, I don't. That's the only way I would let them go. If they're going to draft the quarterback, you keep them both. You let them raise their own quarterback. You give them an extension. They get at least another 2 to 3 years. But if not, then that's the only way I would be convinced to move on.
Um, well, no matter what, there's going to be a new quarterback, no matter what, whether it's by draft or by free
Or
agency
bridge.
in the free agency. So there's going to be a new quarterback, and it's up to, I guess, Mara if he wants to trust that quarterback or whatever. I mean, I still think I know we agree on this that he hasn't had a fair shake yet. Um, and I know 2-15, if that's what happens, looks really bad. But I think with Dan Campbell, I know Dave Ball's in his third year now, but I think with Dan Campbell, I think he went 1-6, 1-15. I think his first year, or 1-6. Well, I guess one. I mean, I know it's a lot. One's Detroit Lions and one's in a New York market, so it looks a lot different. And Dave Ball's his third year already. It's a little different. I get it, but you got to give these guys time. This isn't 3 years now. And I know with the New York market, everyone's like, win now, win now, win now, win now. And
I
it's tough.
think
It's easy for me to say from all the way back here, but you got to give these guys time.
they're also there as a victim that first year screwed everything up because they should have went 3-3 and whatever or 4 and whatever that first year, but they had some success. They were able to curtail Jones's turnovers, but that wasn't their guy. And like I said, I think they deserve the chance to raise their guy. Speaking of their guy, Dan, Major League Baseball is there's a lot of guys that are looking for a new home and for teams to call them their guy. We got some headliners. Alonso's still on the open market. Burns is still not officially signed. With all the rumors we heard about Burns. Bregman's still out there. And interestingly enough, the recent talk is, are the Mets interested in Bregman now too? And that would tie the Mets and the Yankees both to Bregman. The Yankees are out on Alonso though because of bringing in Paul Goldschmidt, which we could talk a little bit about and give our opinions on. I also saw today that the Yankees are interested in Andrew Chafin for the bullpen, one of the premier lefty relievers that is on the market. Yep. So, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
no, and the common thread between those three free agents, actually the top ones you brought up, Scott Boras is the super agent that kind of represents
Big
them, and he's had a history of doing this. I think he's obviously really good with higher priced, higher talented free agents. Juan Soto, obviously, but it seems like he's kind of cost some. I think I forgot the player last year that took like forever to sign. He literally didn't sign. The guy from the Snell,
Conforto?
Snell.
Oh, so
Well,
Conforto was
Conforto. Well, I know they talked about Conforto. I think we were listening at the same time on WFAN. At Conforto, but Snell he didn't sign until I think the year started or the year before the year actually started.
yeah.
And I think it cost him a little bit of money, and it seems like it's same thing. I was surprised. Corbin Burns is a really surprising one to me, considering he's a starter. He's obviously a really good starter. Alonso and Bregman, not so much. But yeah, I don't think the Yankees are getting him. If anything, maybe the Mets, but the Mets trying to put him at second base. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. Gleyber Torres, still out there. Anthony Santander, still out there.
I had them on my
I,
list too. Yep.
I know that pitcher, Sasaki,
Still out there.
but I know he can't get signed to the 15th, I think, because of international stuff. So, but obviously, he's still out there.
Tanner Scott, one of the best bullpen arms, is still out there.
Terry Scott, who was
And
yeah.
Teoscar Hernandez was the other name I
Yeah,
had.
there's actually a lot of good value free agents.
Yep.
I guess they're waiting until after the new year at this point, or getting closer to spring training. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little confused with that.
I guarantee you, at least one of those Boras guys, maybe Alonso, will be one of those like sign a 1 year with a second year option just to kind of insurance cover yourself and try to go back into the market and reset the market next year.
Yeah, maybe because there was a lot of first basemen this year between Christian Walker, between
And if
Goldschmidt.
I've seen outside Vladdy and maybe one other name, I think that the free agent market is set to be very, very depressed next year. So if you're somebody like Alonso, who teams are balking at your requests for at least a 5 year deal, maybe you take yourself a year with a second year player option and reset the market. Go back into the market next year.
Yeah, and he did have a. I know he was clutch in the playoffs. He had a down year though for the Mets. The Mets were all ready to send him a pack in before
Yeah,
that miracle home run against the Brewers against
playoff magic.
against Devin Williams, new Yankee reliever. But it was maybe that might be the best for him. I mean, because obviously it doesn't seem like teams are wanting to give him that 5-year deal. Or even a long term. So it seems like he's probably going to end up going back to the Mets, but it may be on the shorter term
Yep,
deal.
I agree.
Yankees, I know they just traded Jose Trevino for
Yes.
Fernando Cruz, reliever with the Reds, and a younger catcher, Alex Jackson. Um, from what I've seen, this guy is a pretty good splitter. That seems like that's his pitch. We'll see. Could use another arm in the bullpen. I know that was a big thing with the Yankees last year. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad they got rid of Trevino, paved the way for Wells. No questions asked, because I was sick and tired of that. Like last year, I'm like, why is he sitting again? I know that they have their analytics and they'll find a backup catcher, but I want him to get more time than he did last year and stop playing around. As far as Goldschmidt, I like that signing. That leaves them open. Now, listen, I'm not a fan of Vladdy Guerrero and him talking trash about the Yankees, saying I'll never play for the Yankees, because you know what? Yankees offer him more money than anybody else next year. He'll shave himself and he'll go to the Yankees. Uh, but that being said, at least this leaves them open for flexibility. Bellinger could play some first base. Judge, we hope in the future, finds his way to first base to take some wear and tear and let him last that whole contract. So at least that leaves them open for some flexibility. Plus, you have DJ, who's still on this roster, and I don't think he's going anywhere. He's going to be your super utility man, and hopefully the fact is that he's not going to play many games, and maybe he plays a game at second here or there, and maybe he plays a game at first, and maybe a game at third, but he only plays 1 game a week or 2 games a week max. That's a role where I can be comfortable with him, not where he's starting and then just getting like a day off every once in a while.
Yeah, that's what we want to avoid with him, is just being able that whole everyday thing. It kind of happened last year when basically we didn't have a third baseman for a while before Jazz came over and DJ was kind of playing every day, and then Rizzo was hurt for a while, so he was kind of playing first every day with Ben Rice, kind of platooning with Ben Rice. It was a struggle. But yeah, no, I definitely like this signing just because I remember just reading the stat, and it would kind of stick in my mind. I didn't think we had a home run from the first base position in like it was like late July or late something like that, where we didn't have a home run from the first base position from July 30th or for the rest of the year. It was insane. And if Goldschmidt can be, he's going to be better than Rizzo. I mean, that's why I don't think why. Fans are kind of freaking out a little bit. But it's only 1 year. It kind of keeps us in that. If we're still in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes next year, after I don't know if he's going to resign with the Cubs or not, but we got Vlad Guerrero, you got Tucker, there's a decent amount of free agents, it just allows for flexibility. And if Goldschmidt needs a rest, put Bellinger in there. Yeah, I'm sure. I think we still have Trent Grisham. I think he's still around. Put him in center field for the day. I know we don't want him either. I get it. No, trust me, I'm not. But yeah. I worked Dominguez. I guess we're gonna put Dominguez, but we'll see. But yeah, I like the signing so far. I think Yankees are doing a good job.
Yeah, I like the Goldschmidt signing, and that's the other free agent before I was talking about. Besides for Vladdy and Tucker, the rest of the free agent market, that's what we were talking before about when I was talking about Alonso. The rest of the free agent market seems pretty depressed next year. The one thing I would do, and I don't agree with Sean Marash that often at all, because I think he's a loudmouth and he does the hot takes on purpose, and he thinks he's a fake fan. Outside the Giants, I think he's a fake fan of everything else. I don't consider him a real Yankee fan. That being said, he brought up a good point a couple weeks ago on the fan I was listening to. You want to get back at the Mets for taking Juan Soto? I probably said this before, but make Jose Iglesias
that guy.
your utility man. Let him come sing OMG in the Bronx, and I think that'll hurt Met fans more than you bringing in Pete Alonso. So here's a sport where there's no backstabbing, because you guys know your place and we know our place. So go ahead and take your 30 seconds to give us a State of the Union on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, no. So we've lost two of our since we last had our podcast. Lost two out of three. We lost to the Jazz and we lost to Miami. And ever since we traded Dennis Schroeder with Cam Thomas being out, even though Cam Thomas is supposed to be back soon, I wouldn't be surprised if he was back tomorrow. Actually,
Is it
but
12th
still,
game?
we have
12th game? Missed 12th game?
yes. And I know he's playing 5-on-5, and they have a back-to-back between today against Milwaukee. They have San Antonio tomorrow. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually back tomorrow in like limited role. But we have a lack of when we trade Schroeder, we have a lack of creation, and Simmons and Claxton can't share the floor. I think we're doing as good a job as we can, but at this point, the Nets fans are just kind of watching to see if Finney Smith gets traded or if and when Cam Johnson gets traded, and just seeing if with the tank is still on, see if we can get inside the top 5 for the year.
Yep. I mean, Cooper Flag. Cooper
There's
Flag.
a lot of other guys. A lot of other guys.
Cooper Flag's the best out of that, but I do like the kids from Rutgers too. But yeah, the Nets are 2-8 in the last 10. Reverse of that is the New York Knicks, who are 8-2 in their last 10, and they've won 6 in a row since their NBA Cup loss to the Hawks. They are now 2 back of Boston. They look pretty impressive, although I mean the Spurs aren't much. I took them for my over pick earlier in the year for their over and wins. But you know, Bridges, like we talked about pre-show before we got on in the studio, was Bridges looks more comfortable. His numbers in December are far exceed his numbers in November, and he looks like he's starting to fit in and find his role.
It was so I watched. Yeah, I watched the whole game yesterday. Nice noon Christmas start. And it was actually good to see. So Brunson obviously had a struggle of a game. Towns was in foul trouble all game. OG was kind of struggling. Bridges was that guy, even though I know the fourth quarter he scored like 17 points in that fourth quarter, but Bridges kept him in the game. Like he was the one that didn't let that game get out of control. Um, and he scored 41. Obviously, he had 41 points. But it was good to see that he kind of took control, and you're right. They're kind of finding their place. Like they know when to do certain things. Like all right, Bridges, like all right, it's my time. Like, and they knew to get Bridges the ball anytime, and he was just launching it, and he was making it. He had a hell of a game. He looked like he couldn't miss. But yeah, no, it was good. Josh Hart was being Josh Hart at the end of the game. He had a couple of those key offensive rebounds. But yeah, it's definitely what you said, 6 straight. So that's 6 straight. Their schedule. I mean, they got Orlando with a bunch of their stars missing, the Wizards twice, and you have Utah. So that should go to 10 straight. And they're really kind of finding their own. They're 20-10 now, right? So they're third in the East. They're kind of right where everyone kind of projected them to be. Kind of as the year. I mean, it's still early in the year, but we're kind of projecting them to be up there with the Celtics. Maybe the Cavs are a little bit of a surprise, but I don't think any Knicks fan should be nervous about the Cavs at all. It seems like right now Knicks are finding their stride, and it's really a Knicks Celtics Eastern Conference right now.
Give you a little piece of my opinion on the Cavs. As bad as the Sixers have been this year, I'd be more scared of the Sixers in a series than I am of the Cavs. The Knicks own the Cavs in a series, and as good as Donovan Mitchell is, the rest of his team disappears when the moment is brightest. So I am not scared of the Cavs, and I may eat those words later on, but for now, that's how I feel about the Cavs. Jen, I got nothing else for basketball. It's a long season, just like hockey is. But I will give you a quick 30-second check in on my New York Rangers. I know you're not a hockey guy, but you know this when we talk about sports, no matter what. When there's a team that has a free fall like the Rangers have had, they were the number one team in the regular season last year. They did not make it to the Stanley Cup, which everyone had hoped for. They lost right before that, and they are now only 5 points. They started off good this year. In the first couple weeks actually, they were one of the top 2 or 3 teams, and they are now only 5 points from the bottom of the barrel. They're about 3 wins or 4 wins up on the last place team. And all the rumors are that the coach has got to go. Sometimes it's just you got to give the fans the piece of meat they want. and go in a different direction. But who
Is it
knows?
that
Dolan
is it that
still
bad?
needs some
I mean, it's
things.
still early in the year.
Yeah.
I hear radio. I know they don't talk about hockey much, but they're saying the season's over. I know they traded Capo Caco. Is it over already? And you tell me,
It
I'm
would
not.
take
But really,
it would take a hell of a run. They've
really,
built them for the
them.
last month or so. They've put themselves in such a hole that, like I said, there would be so many teams they'd have to climb over just to sneak into the playoffs. And this is not a team that you would. This is not a team. Give you an idea. This would be like the Boston Celtics last year, uh, running roughshod over the East, and then this year being the 10th or 11th place team in the conference. That's the equivalent. That's the only equivalent I can think of right now to give you for the Rangers is that they were, expected to be one of the top three teams in the league in the conference, and are legitimately a bottom five team. So,
All right,
tough.
it's crazy how far. I know. Great start. All of a sudden, trading away
It is
pieces in December.
tough. So Dan, we're gonna have to start thinking of some trivia for us to do because we only got. I mean, we can do some playoff picks too for football, but we only
Yeah.
got two more videos for picks, and then we're done the regular season football.
Yeah, no, it's coming. It's crazy. New Year's next Wednesday already. One more year of picks. Like you said, we'll do division picks, and that's fine. We can do a whole thing on our playoff predictions, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I want to do some more trivia, do some more things, get some of our buddies involved too. It'd be great to get some people.
Yeah, absolutely. So sign them off, Dan.
All right, yeah. So keep going, keep those subscribers, followers up. Follow us, like us on Instagram, X, YouTube, Facebook. All our videos are posted twice a week. So until next year, I'm Danny. This is Neil. Signing off.